Hamas's weapons of resistance, smuggled, Israel says, over Gaza's border with Egypt. A route, they say, that gives Hamas and other Palestinian factions the ability to fire rockets at Israel. This is why Israel has been bombing the tunnels relentlessly since it began its war.
When the terrorist acts stop, and when the smuggling of weapons from Egypt to Gaza stops, then the Israeli fighting will stop.
And the next step, they say, must be an international mechanism to ensure Hamas cannot rebuild the tunnels in the future. Israel says as long as Hamas has this, the country will never feel safe. A belief so firmly held, some officials are even talking about building an underground wall. A measure that shows the level of Israel's concern. The tunnels are located along Gaza's 15-kilometer border with Egypt, with most tunnels concentrated around the city of Rafah.
We set off for the southern town of Rafah, rumoured to be the capital of the black market in the Gaza Strip. As we approach the closed border with Egypt, we come across what looks like a large encampment of tents and tarpaulins. We have in fact driven straight into the heart of the smuggling operation in Gaza.
This is Gaura. Gaura? Coffee, yeah? Nescafe. Nescafe.
So the Egyptian military recently announced that it's building a number of fish farms right on the border with Gaza. That seems like a weird thing for Egypt to be doing, and an even weirder place to be doing it. And weirder still, Egypt sees the fish farms as part of their counter-terrorism strategy. As you might have guessed, there's a lot more going on here. The site of the future fisheries is Rafah, a town that sits half in Egypt and half in the Gaza Strip. The border cuts right down the middle. That border became a very big deal in 2007 when the organization Hamas took control of Gaza. Hamas's military arm was a big security concern for both Egypt and Israel, and both countries basically closed their borders with Gaza. This has meant a severe blockade of the Gaza Strip. The flow of goods in and out is extremely limited. For Gazans, the blockade has inspired some creativity, namely a network of secret tunnels between the Gazan and Egyptian sides of Rafah. The tunnels have been used to smuggle in all manner of goods, from fuel, construction materials, and tools, to dry foods, cigarettes, and livestock. It's been a big industry for years, with some estimates placing the number of tunnels in the thousands. Depending on who you ask, the tunnels are either a godsend or a curse. Israel has called them arteries of terror, out of fear that they're helping weapons get to Hamas. Hamas, on the other hand, happily collects taxes on anything passing through the tunnels, and has admitted to getting weapons that way too. And then there's Egypt. The Egyptian military has long feared that the tunnels could allow terrorists to sneak across the border, and it's done a lot to shutter them. In 2009, they built an underground wall almost 60 feet deep beneath the crossing. Smugglers breached it within a year. In 2013, they pumped raw sewage into the tunnels. Smugglers presumably plugged their noses. And then, this past August, the military began construction of the fish farms. Which sounds ridiculous, except that it involved pumping untold gallons of seawater into the border area, which utterly swamped the tunnel system. According to one anonymous tunnel builder, the result was devastating.
They have destroyed everything in 20 days. During the 50-day war, the Israeli rockets couldn't do such a thing. And 10 days after the war, we were able to get this business back. But now, we are unable to get our businesses back. All the tunnels have collapsed.
The ruination of the tunnel system is great news for the Egyptian military, bad news for Hamas, but maybe the worst news of all for the Gazan people. Legal or otherwise, the tunnels were an employer in Rafah, and an important release valve for the pressures of the blockade. All of that may be gone now.
the Arab-Israeli War of 1948 to 1949, the Gaza Strip remained under Egypt's military administration until its occupation by Israel in the 1967 June War. In this period, the Sinai Bedouins and Palestinians in Gaza continued to mingle through intermarriage and social contracts. This ended when the southern border city of Rafah was split following the 1979 Egypt-Israel peace treaty, leaving it divided between Gaza and Egypt. As soon as the agreement was implemented, underground tunnels were dug in home basements across 14-kilometer-long Gaza-Egypt border. Israel's first recorded discovery of a tunnel was in 1983. After signing the Oslo Accords, Israel built a high barrier around Gaza. Access to Gaza Strip was monitored through Israel's terminals, but when the Second Intifada broke out in 2000, Israel often closed down the terminals and destroyed Gaza's sea and airports. Existing tunnels were subsequently upgraded and new ones dug to supplement the shortages, which were a direct result of Israel's strict control of all traffic of goods and materials. The Israeli military, in the knowledge that the tunnels were also used for arms trafficking, began to demolish homes that harbored tunnels, and later expanded the demolitions, creating a buffer zone between the border and Rafah city. According to Human Rights Watch, some 1,700 homes were destroyed between 2000 and 2004 in order to create a 100-meter wide buffer zone along the Gaza-Egypt border, the so-called Philadelphia Corridor, known in Israel as the Philadelphia Road. In addition, while implementing its unilateral withdrawal plan from the Gaza Strip in 2005, Israel built an 8-meter high wall. The Mubarak regime in Egypt supported the construction of the wall and the demolition of the tunnels, as it would safeguard against any activity that might threaten Egypt's lucrative tourist industry along the Red Sea. In addition, Egypt feared that Israel's withdrawal would saddle Egypt with the responsibility for 1.7 million inhabitants, disconnecting it from the West Bank and thereby obstructing the foundation of an integral Palestinian state. In January 2006, after Hamas won the Palestinian general elections, Israel responded by systematically tightening its borders and imposing a full-scale blockade of the Strip. Israel closed the Eretz terminal to Gazan laborers working in Israel, who at the time constituted 70% of Gaza's workforce. It also shut down the Karni terminal, Gaza's preliminary crossing for goods, and it prevented the use of the Rafah terminal for passenger traffic. The array of restrictions on trade and human traffic in and out of Gaza Strip, coupled with regular Israeli attacks, prompted Palestinians to dig deeper and longer tunnels. This was posted about 2 hours ago by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, and Reuters just reported about 20 minutes ago that Israel had indeed made its first rocket launches in an attempt to take out some of Hamas. It's 4:45 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the United States. It is 11:45 in Israel, and it is Shabbat. Maybe now you understand why a two-state system is not sustainable, Israel has tried and tried, and I've given you the history of the tunnels, a very thumbnail sketch. Thank you for joining me. God bless you. Pray for the peace of Israel. I'll see you real soon.